You saved my tribe. Now I give you my daughter as wife." The Apache elder's words hit me harder than a rifle butt to the jaw. The blood on my hands, caked black under the desert sun, suddenly felt cold. Just 3 days ago, I was nothing. A drifter named Thaddeus Crane, with a ghost in my past and a future that looked like a whole lot of dust and regret. Now I was standing in the center of a warrior circle, being offered the one thing I'd spent my life running from. A family. The elder's voice was like rocks grinding together, ancient and heavy. Every warrior's eyes were locked on me. They weren't friendly eyes. They were testing me. Behind them, the women of the camp moved like ghosts between the wickiups, their faces hidden in shadow, but I could feel their stares too. They were all waiting for my answer, and I couldn't even breathe. Because the old man wasn't just offering me a wife, he was offering me a life. And in my world, a life like that always came with a price usually paid in blood. This time, it felt like they were asking for more than blood. They were asking for my soul, and that's when she stepped forward. From behind the circle of warriors, a figure emerged, and the air crackled. She moved like smoke, silent and graceful, her black hair catching the firelight in 1,000 tiny sparks. She wore a deerskin dress covered in beadwork so fine it looked like a painter's masterpiece. But it was her eyes that stopped my heart. They were dark, deep, and held a fire that could either save a man or burn him to ashes. Her name, they told me, was Ayana, the elder's only daughter. She was maybe 20 years old, but her eyes held the wisdom of 100 winters. And as she looked at me, I saw something that terrified me far more than the bandits I'd helped them kill. It wasn't love. It wasn't gratitude. It was a warning. This wasn't a gift. It was a contract. And I had a sinking feeling I was the one being sold. It all started 3 nights earlier. I was riding hard, my horse Sherman about to give out from under me. For 2 days, a pack of bandits led by a man named Diego Vasquez had been on my tail. Vasquez was a special kind of monster. He made his name gutting folks from Tucson to El Paso, and he had it in his head that I was carrying something valuable. He was wrong. The only things I carried were a beat-up Winchester and a past I couldn't shake. I made my stand at what I thought was an abandoned waterhole. I had 12 rounds left. Vasquez had 13 men. I figured I'd take as many of them with me as I could before they put me in the ground. I was ready to die. The desert had a way of making you accept things like that. But the waterhole wasn't abandoned. They rose from the dirt itself. 8 Apache warriors, faces painted for war, silent as the grave. They didn't point their weapons at me. They just surrounded me, watching, waiting. Their leader, a man named Nalish with scars that told stories of 100 battles, just nodded at me. He had the eyes of a man who could see right through you. When Vasquez and his men finally rode in, screaming and firing their pistols, they didn't find one lone drifter. They found an army in miniature. The fight was over in 10 minutes. It was a whirlwind of smoke, steel, and fury. I fought alongside men whose names I didn't know, a brotherhood born in gunpowder. The bandits' arrogance turned to pure terror as arrows found their hearts and my Winchester spoke its deadly sermon. I put 2 rounds in Vasquez's chest myself, ending his reign of blood right then and there. After, in the quiet, Nalish told me the truth. Vasquez wasn't just after me. He'd been hunting this very band of Apache, planning to take their women and children for the slave markets. My desperate last stand had stumbled right into the middle of their war. By trying to save my own skin, I had accidentally saved them all. And that brought me here, to this moment, standing in front of the elder, with his daughter Ayana, looking at me like I was a puzzle she was trying to solve. The elder spoke again, and Nalish translated. Our ways are old, a life for a life. You saved our future. We give you ours. He gestured to Ayana. Ayana then spoke for the first time. Her English was perfect, like music. My father honors you, she said, her voice steady, but her eyes were screaming. But he also sees a man who has lost his way, a man who needs a home. It wasn't a comfort, it was an accusation. The ceremony was a blur. They gave me gifts I didn't understand, had me speak words in a language I didn't know. Through it all, Ayana stood at the edge of the firelight, her expression unreadable. I was being tied to these people, to this woman, and I didn't know why. But I knew deep in my gut that this was about more than just gratitude. There was a secret here, a dark one, and I had just been made a part of it. Later that night, we were alone. They had given us a wiki-up, a small shelter that felt more like a cage. We sat by a small fire, the silence of the desert pressing in on us. "You are afraid," she said. It wasn't a question. "Terrified," I admitted. The word felt small and useless. A strange, sad smile touched her lips. "Good," she whispered, leaning closer. The firelight danced in her eyes. "You should be. You have no idea what you've just agreed to." And with that, she got up and vanished into the darkness of the shelter, leaving me alone with the fire and the chilling certainty that I had just made the biggest mistake of my life. I didn't sleep that night. Every shadow seemed to hold a threat. Every gust of wind sounded like a whisper. What had I agreed to? I kept replaying her words, the cold warning in her voice. "You have no idea." The next morning, she was my teacher. Ayana showed me how to survive in her world. Not just survive, but see. She taught me how to find water by watching the flight of a bird, how to tell which plants could heal and which could kill. Her knowledge was a deep well, and I felt like a child scooping water with his hands. But as she taught me, I watched her. I saw the way her eyes would scan the horizon, not like someone enjoying the view, but like a sentry on duty. I saw the tension in her shoulders that never truly went away. She told me stories of her life, of being educated by Franciscan nuns in Santa Fe. She spoke 4 languages, she said. Her mind was sharp as a razor, but her stories had holes, little gaps in time, moments she'd skip over. When I'd ask, her face would become a mask, and she'd change the subject. She was hiding something big, and there was something else. During the fight with Vasquez, in the blur of it all, I'd seen something. A strange tattoo on the back of Vasquez's dead hand. It wasn't just a random design. It was a symbol, a stylized eagle with a broken wing. I'd seen it before, a long, long time ago. It was the insignia of the U.S. Army's 7th Cavalry, an experimental scouting unit, a unit that had been officially disbanded after a massacre years ago, a unit I used to belong to. My past was a ghost I thought I'd outrun, a court-martial, a disgrace, a life on the run under a new name. My real name wasn't Thaddeus Crane, and that symbol on Vasquez's hand was a message from a grave I thought was long buried. Why would a Mexican bandit have the mark of a secret American cavalry unit? The pieces didn't fit, and every day I spent with Ayana, the puzzle only got more complicated. She was teaching me to survive the desert, but I had a feeling the real danger wasn't the heat or the snakes. It was right here in this camp, hidden behind her beautiful haunted eyes. One evening I decided to push. We were cleaning rifles by the fire. "The nuns," I said casually, "what did they teach you about fighting?" She froze for a split second. It was almost imperceptible, but I saw it. "Nuns do not teach fighting," she said, her voice flat. "Funny," I said, looking down the barrel of my Winchester. "Because you move like a soldier. You check your surroundings every 10 seconds. You anticipate things before they happen. Those aren't things you learn in a convent." She put her rifle down and looked at me, her eyes blazing with a fire I hadn't seen before. "There is much you do not know about me, Thaddeus Crane." "I'm starting to realize that," I said, "just like there's much you don't know about me." Before she could answer, a shout echoed through the camp. A scout was riding in, his horse lathered in sweat. He yelled a single word in Apache, but the panic in his voice needed no translation. Nalish ran to meet him, and a moment later he turned to the camp, his face grim. He looked directly at me. "Soldiers," he said in English, "a cavalry patrol is coming. They are led by a man named Whitfield." And the world stopped. Lieutenant Colonel Marcus Whitfield, my former commanding officer, the man who had been my mentor, my friend, the man who set me up, who framed me for his own war crimes, who destroyed my life and forced me to become a ghost. He was here, and he wasn't here by accident. Ayana was staring at me, her suspicion replaced by shock. She saw the look on my face. She saw that the name meant something to me. For the first time, the mask fell, and I saw real fear in her eyes. Not for the soldiers, for me. And in that gut-wrenching moment, I realized the horrifying truth. This wasn't a coincidence. Vasquez, the cavalry tattoo, Whitfield's arrival. It was all connected. This wasn't a random drifter stumbling into an Apache camp. This was a trap, and I had walked right into the center of it. Panic clawed its way up my throat. Whitfield. Of all the people in this god-forsaken territory, it had to be him. My mind raced, trying to connect the dots. Vasquez worked for Whitfield. The bandit attack wasn't random. It was a probe, a test, and I had interfered. I had killed his pawn. Now he was coming to clean up the mess himself. The camp was in turmoil. Warriors grabbed their weapons. Mothers pulled their children close. This wasn't just a patrol. It was an execution squad. Whitfield didn't take prisoners. I knew his methods all too well. I was trapped between two worlds. If the Apache found out who I really was, a former U.S. Army scout, one of the very men they'd been fighting for generations, they would kill me. If Whitfield found me here, he would kill me to ensure his secret stayed buried. There was no escape. Then Ayanna did something that shocked me. In the middle of the chaos, she grabbed my arm, her grip like steel. She pulled me behind a wickiup, away from the prying eyes. "You know him," she whispered, her voice urgent. "That name, Whitfield. I saw your face." This was it. The moment of truth. I could lie, try to bluff my way through. But looking into her eyes, I knew it was pointless. She was too smart. And for some reason, telling her the truth felt like the only move I had left. "He was my commanding officer," I said, the words tasting like ash. "He destroyed my life. I've been running from him for 5 years." Her eyes widened, not with accusation, but with a sudden, terrifying understanding. The pieces were clicking into place for her too. She looked from me toward the direction the scout had come from, then back again. Her mind was working, calculating, planning. "Then you are the only one who can save us," she said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Save you? Ayanna, he's here to kill all of you. And me." "No," she said, shaking her head. "He is not here for us. Not really. He is here for the same thing Vasquez was after." My blood ran cold. "And what's that?" She hesitated, her gaze darting around as if the rocks themselves were listening. "My father. Our laws are strict. If I tell you, you become part of this. There is no going back." "I think I'm already past the point of no return," I said, my voice grim. She took a deep breath. "There is a place, deep in the mountains, a place our people call the heart of the mountain. It is where a star fell from the sky long ago. The rock is not from this world. It sings." She saw the disbelief on my face. "Not a real song, a vibration. It makes the plants grow stronger, the water cleaner. It is the source of our life in this harsh land, our most sacred secret." A meteorite, a sacred site. It sounded like a legend. "Vasquez was not a simple bandit," she continued, her words tumbling out. "He was an associate. He learned of the heart. He thought it held monetary value. Gold, silver, jewels. He was trying to force my father to reveal its location." "And Whitfield?" I asked, the dread growing in my stomach. "He is more clever. He knows it is not gold. He works for men who want the land, the railroad. They believe the Sky Stone gives this land a unique power, a strategic value. They want to control it. Whitfield's orders are not just to move us to a reservation. His orders are to secure the heart of the mountain at any cost." It all clicked into place. This wasn't about Indians or bandits. It was about resources, greed, the same old story written in a different corner of the desert. "So what's the plan?" I asked, my mind reeling. Ayanna's eyes locked onto mine, and the look in them was one of pure, desperate genius. "You will not hide. You will not run. You will ride out to meet him." I must have looked at her like she was crazy. "Meet him? He'll shoot me on sight." "No, he won't," she said, a flicker of a grim smile on her face. "Because you won't be Thaddeus Crane, the drifter married to an Apache. You will be his long-lost, disgraced scout, a man who has just escaped captivity. You will tell him you know where the Apache are. You will tell him you know where their sacred site is, and you will lead him on the wildest goose chase of his life." The plan was insane. It was suicidal. It was also brilliant. It was a gamble that relied on my ability to lie to the best liar I'd ever known, to play a role so convincing that it would save the lives of everyone in this camp. Ayana didn't wait for my answer. She was already gathering materials, plant dyes to create fake bruises, a sharp stone to tear my clothes just so. "We must be quick," she said, her hands moving with practiced efficiency. "We have to make you look like you've been through hell." I looked at her, truly looked at her, for the first time. The quiet, mysterious chief's daughter was gone. In her place was a strategist, a warrior, the education from the nuns, the fluent languages. It wasn't for show, it was for survival. She was the protector of her people, and she was far more dangerous than any warrior in the camp. And she was asking me to walk back into the jaws of the monster that had devoured my life. Ayana worked with a terrifying focus. She was an artist painting a masterpiece of misery onto my body. She used a dark berry dye to create deep purple bruises on my face and arms, and a thin, sharp piece of obsidian to make shallow cuts on my back that she rubbed with dirt to make them look old and festered. She tore my shirt and trousers, fraying the edges to suggest a long and brutal captivity. "When he finds you, you cannot be strong," she coached me, her voice low and intense. "You must be broken, a man who has lost everything. Whitfield preys on weakness. He will see you as a tool he can use, not a threat." She handed me a small leather pouch filled with aromatic herbs. A medicine pouch. "This belonged to my grandfather," she said, her voice softening for the first time. "It will keep you safe. It will remind you who you are fighting for." As I tucked it inside my torn shirt, the weight of it felt immense. I wasn't just fighting for my own life anymore. I was fighting for them, for her. The drifter was gone. In his place was something else, something I didn't have a name for yet. I rode out alone on Sherman, carrying a tattered piece of my shirt on a stick as a white flag. The plan was to let his scouts find me, to seem like a desperate survivor stumbling through the desert. Every mile that separated me from the camp felt like a year off my life. The desert, which Ayana had taught me to read, now seemed like an enemy again, vast and empty. It didn't take long. Two blue-coated troopers crested a mesa, their rifles glinting in the sun. They saw me, and for a moment I thought they'd just shoot. But they saw the flag. They saw my condition. I was exactly what they expected to find, another victim of the savage Apache. They brought me to their camp. And there he was, Lieutenant Colonel Marcus Whitfield. He hadn't changed. He was leaner, maybe, the desert sun having baked the last bit of softness from his face. But his eyes were the same, cold, calculating, like chips of blue ice. He stood with his hands on his hips, a picture of military authority. When he saw me, his eyes widened in genuine shock for a fraction of a second, before the mask of command slammed back down. "Sergeant Collier," he said, using my real name, the name I hadn't heard in 5 years. "My God, we thought you were dead." It was the perfect opening. I collapsed to my knees, playing the part Ayana had written for me. "Colonel, thank God," I croaked, my voice raw from a combination of dust and feigned despair. He helped me up, his grip firm. It was the same grip he'd used when he clapped me on the shoulder right before he sent me into the ambush that ruined my life. "What happened to you, son? The Apache have had you all this time?" The interrogation began. It was a masterclass in manipulation, a chess game where every move could mean death. I spun the tale Ayana and I had concocted. I was a prospector. I'd been captured by a brutal war chief named Red Wolf. I described a band that didn't exist, in a location miles from where Nalish's people were hiding. The key was the heart of the mountain. "They have a secret place, sir," I whispered, leaning in as if sharing a great confidence. "A canyon where the rocks glow at night. They call it their sunken star. They perform rituals there. It's their power. Red Wolf is planning to lead a raid on the settlements along the Gila River from there." Whitfield's eyes lit up with a greedy fire. It was the only sign he gave that he was taking the bait. He believed me. Or more accurately, he wanted to believe me. My story confirmed what he already suspected. He saw me not as a man, but as a map, a living key to the prize he was after. "You've done well, Collier," he said, his voice laced with false sympathy. "You're a hero." He offered me food, water, a place in his own tent. The hospitality was suffocating. I knew he was watching my every move, listening to my every word, searching for any crack in my story. The most dangerous moment came when he offered to send me back to Fort Grant with an escort. You need a doctor, a proper debriefing. Refusing would be suspicious, but if I left, the Apache would be on their own. I had to stay. I had to keep him on his false trail. I drew on another piece of Ayana's brilliant plan. Sir, I said, my voice shaking with calculated desperation, my prospecting gear. It's everything I have left in this world. It's cash not far from where I escaped. Before I go back, I have to get it. Please, let me guide a small detail there. It's on the way to the canyon I told you about. It was the perfect play. It appealed to his sense of order and his assumption about civilian priorities. A man on the brink would cling to the last remnants of his old life. He saw my request as authentic, the plea of a broken man. Very well, he agreed, a thin smile on his lips. He thought he was manipulating me. He had no idea he was dancing to Ayana's tune. He gave me a detail of 6 men. For 2 days, I led them on a winding, pointless journey deeper into the Badlands, away from Nalish's camp. I pointed out false tracks, described fictional ambushes, and built a world of lies so detailed that the soldiers around me began to fear the shadows. I was using my old skills, the very ones Whitfield had taught me, against him. We reached a prearranged spot, a rocky outcrop that looked like it could have been a prospector's camp. Apache warriors hiding in the rocks hundreds of feet away had planted a few broken tools and a tattered bedroll, just as Ayana had planned. It was a stage set for my final performance. The soldiers helped me recover my worthless junk. That evening, the sergeant in charge of the detail clapped me on the back. You're lucky to be alive, he said. Don't you worry. The colonel will wipe that red wolf off the map. The next morning, we parted ways. They rode north toward the fictional canyon and the imaginary war chief. I rode south, back toward the real camp, and the woman who had trusted me with her people's lives. As I watched the dust from their horses fade into the horizon, a cold knot of fear tightened in my stomach. The deception had worked. For now. But I knew Whitfield. He was relentless. He was a bloodhound. And when he realized he'd been tricked, his rage would be biblical. I hadn't bought them a permanent solution. I had only bought them time. And it was running out fast. Returning to the camp was like coming home to a place I'd never known. The relief on their faces was a physical thing, a wave that washed over me. Nalish gripped my shoulder, his old eyes filled with a respect that humbled me. But it was Ayana's reaction that I searched for. She met me at the edge of the camp, away from the others. She didn't say a word. She just looked at me, her eyes searching my face. Then she reached out and gently touched one of the fake bruises on my cheek. A single tear traced a path through the dust on her own. It was in that moment, in that silent gesture, that I knew. Our marriage, born of ceremony and desperation, had become something real. The peace my deception had bought us was fragile and short-lived. 11 days. We had exactly 11 days. Then the scouts returned. Their news was grim. Whitfield had found out. Maybe he'd run into a real prospector who knew the area, or maybe his own instincts had finally told him the truth. It didn't matter. The lie had unraveled, and he was coming. But this time, it was different. He wasn't just on patrol. He had been reinforced. His command had swelled to nearly 70 soldiers. They weren't hunting anymore. They were sweeping, a methodical, systematic grid search of the entire region. They were moving canyon by canyon, spring by spring. They were no longer chasing a ghost. They were exterminating a species. The news hit the camp like a physical blow. The fragile hope shattered. The men began talking of a last glorious stand. The women began to pack what little they owned, preparing to flee deeper into the mountains, a flight that would only delay the inevitable. I looked at Ayana, and I saw the weight of her people's fate settling on her shoulders. We had played our trick, and it had failed. Now the wolf was at the door, and he was not alone. That night a council was held. The elders, the warriors, Nalish, they all gathered around the central fire. The debate was fierce. Some argued for guerrilla warfare, strike and fade, bleed the soldiers one by one, make the desert their weapon. Others, younger and more desperate, argued for a direct confrontation, a battle that would be suicide, but would at least be a noble end. I stood at the edge of the circle, an outsider who was now inextricably linked to their destiny. I was the reason Whitfield's rage was so focused. My deception had made this personal for him. Then Ayanna stood up. The firelight cast her face in sharp relief, making her look like a queen from some ancient legend. All eyes turned to her. "We cannot fight them," she said, her voice clear and strong, cutting through the arguments. "And we cannot outrun them. Their world is coming for us, and it will not stop. We have tried to hide from it. We have tried to trick it. Now we must face it." An old warrior scoffed. "Face it? You mean surrender? Live in their cages on the reservation?" "No," Ayanna said, and her eyes found mine across the fire. "I mean we must do something they will never expect. We will not offer them war. We will offer them peace, but on our terms." The council erupted. The idea was madness. The white man's treaties were lies, traps meant to pacify them before the final slaughter. "This time is different," she insisted, her voice rising, "because this time we have a man who can speak their language, who understands their laws, who knows their leader." She pointed directly at me. "He will go to them, not as an escaped prisoner, but as our ambassador." The silence that followed was heavier than any argument. They were all staring at me. The strange white man who had appeared from nowhere. They were being asked to place their entire existence, the survival of their children, the future of their people, in the hands of their enemy. It was an impossible choice. Later, alone with Ayanna, the enormity of her plan crashed down on me. "They'll never agree," I said. "And Whitfield, he wants blood, Ayanna, not a treaty. My blood most of all." "You are wrong," she said, her expression intense. "Whitfield does not care about you. He cares about his mission, the heart of the mountain. If we can offer him a way to control this territory without a bloody, prolonged war that would look bad on his record, he might listen. He is a man of ambition, not just hate." She was right. I knew she was. Whitfield's every action was calculated for how it would advance his career. A peaceful resolution, one that gave him control of the coveted land, would be a bigger victory for him than a massacre. "It's a long shot," I said. "Our lives have become a long shot," she replied, "but this is the only one we have." The plan was audacious. A small delegation, myself, Nalish, and 2 other respected elders, would ride out under a flag of truce. We wouldn't wait for him to find us. We would go to him from a position of strength and confidence, not as a defeated people. We would offer a treaty, a designated territory for the Apache, right here in their ancestral lands in exchange for peace and an end to all hostilities. It was a gamble of epic proportions. We were walking into the lion's den, not knowing if he would see us as diplomats or as dinner. The night before we left, Ayanna gave me a new medicine bundle. This one was different, heavier. Inside, she had placed a piece of turquoise from her grandmother and a small carved bone that had been passed down through her family for generations. "This time, you do not go as a liar," she whispered, her hands closing over mine. "You go as one of us. You carry our future in your hands, Thaddeus Crane." She used my fake name, but there was no mockery in it. It was the name of the man she had married, the man she was trusting with everything she held dear. As we rode out the next morning, the rising sun casting long shadows behind us, I looked back at the camp. Ayanna stood there, watching us go. She was not just my wife. She was my commander, my strategist, my hope. And I knew that if I failed, I wouldn't just be condemning her people to death. I would be condemning myself to a hell worse than any I had ever known, because I would have lost the only thing in my life that had ever felt like home. Finding Whitfield's force wasn't hard. They moved like a slow-moving plague across the landscape, leaving a trail of trampled earth and fear. His camp was a model of military efficiency, a temporary fortress in the middle of the desert. Sentries were posted, patrols circled. This was a man preparing for total war. Riding into that camp under a flag of truce was the hardest thing I've ever done. Every soldier we passed looked at us with pure hatred. Their fingers twitched on their triggers. To them, we were the enemy, the reason they were baking in this miserable sun. They saw savages. They didn't see old men who were desperate to save their families. Whitfield met us in front of his command tent. He looked surprised but also intrigued. He was a predator who had just watched his prey walk willingly into his jaws. He didn't know what to make of it. His eyes locked on me, and I could see the cold fury behind his professional calm. He knew I had played him for a fool. "Collier," he said, his voice dangerously soft, "you have been a busy man." "My name is Thaddeus Crane," I said, my voice steady, meeting his gaze without flinching. "And I am here as a representative of the Apache Nation under the leadership of Chief Nalish." The negotiations took 3 days. 3 days of tension so thick you could cut it with a knife. We sat in his tent, the sweltering heat a constant oppression. It was a battle of wills, a poker game for the soul of the desert. Whitfield wanted unconditional surrender, reservation, the end of the Apache as a free people. Nalish, with me translating, spoke of history, of promises broken by the white man, of his people's sacred connection to this land. He spoke not as a conquered chief, but as a sovereign leader. It was on the second day that we reached the breaking point. Whitfield was about to walk away to give the order to attack. I knew I had to play my final card. It was a proposal that Ayanna and I had crafted, a desperate gambit that would change everything. "Colonel," I said, interrupting the heated exchange, "what if you could have everything you want? Control of this territory, a peaceful resolution to report to your superiors, and a guarantee that the peace will hold?" He looked at me skeptical. "And how would you propose that, Crane?" He spat my name like it was a curse. "The Apache will be granted this territory," I said, pointing to a section on his campaign map, a section that included the mountains, but kept them far from settler roots. "They will agree to federal oversight. They will not raid. They will live in peace." "Words," Whitfield sneered. "Worthless words." "Not just word," I said, taking a deep breath. "A guarantee. I will remain here. I will serve as the official federal agent to this tribe. A liaison. Your man on the inside. Any sign of trouble, any broken promise, and I report directly to you. You'll have constant surveillance, a direct line into their world without firing another shot." The tent went silent. Nalish and the other elders stared at me. They hadn't known about this part of the plan. This was my sacrifice. The one Ayanna and I had agreed was necessary. To bind myself to this land, to these people, forever. To become a bridge, but also a prisoner of both sides. I watched Whitfield's mind work. I could almost see the gears turning. He saw the genius of it. It gave him the victory he needed. He could report that he had pacified the last hostile band in the territory. He would be a hero, and he would have his own personal warden watching over his prize. It was a deal too good to refuse. He looked from me to Nalish, a slow, predatory smile spreading across his face. "You would do that? Condemn yourself to a life among them?" "I am already one of them," I said, and for the first time I knew it was true. The treaty was drawn up. It was more generous than we had dared hope. The Apache would keep a significant portion of their ancestral lands. In return, they would lay down their arms and accept my position as a federal liaison. As Whitfield signed the document, his eyes met mine. There was no warmth, no respect. There was only the cold look of a gamesman who believes he has just won. He thought he had me trapped, that he had turned me into his permanent pawn. He had no idea that I had just become his jailer. He thought he had contained the Apache. But what we had really done was create a fortress, a sanctuary, with me as the gatekeeper. The ride back was quiet. The elders were processing what had just happened. They had won a future, but at a cost they were still trying to understand. When we reached the camp, Ayanna was waiting. The relief in her eyes when she saw us, alive and whole, was all the reward I needed. That night, she didn't ask about the negotiations or the treaty. She just held my hand by the fire, her presence a silent confirmation that we had made the right choice. But as the camp celebrated its salvation, a cold dread settled in my heart. We had won a battle of wits with Whitfield. We had forged a fragile peace. But I knew this was not the end. It was an intermission. Whitfield was not a man who accepted anything less than total victory. The treaty wasn't a solution, it was a ceasefire. And he was out there, somewhere in the desert, plotting his next move. He still wanted the heart of the mountain, and he thought he now had the perfect man on the inside to help him get it. The war wasn't over. It had just gone silent. The months that followed were a strange dream. Our life settled into a rhythm, a delicate dance between two worlds. I was Thaddeus Crane, husband to Iona, adopted son of the Apache. I was also Agent Crane, the United States government's official representative, filing weekly reports to Fort Grant, reports that were carefully worded half-truths designed to keep the bureaucracy satisfied, and Whitfield at a distance. Iona and I became a true team. She advised me on the tribe's customs and politics, while I taught her about the labyrinth of federal law and military thinking. Our nights were spent not just as husband and wife, but as strategists, planning for a future we knew was uncertain. The love that had grown between us was forged in this shared struggle, a bond stronger than any I had ever known. Then in the spring, our daughter was born. We named her Tesbihi, Morning Star in Apache. Holding her for the first time, I felt a shift inside me. The last remnants of the ghost Sergeant Collier died. This was my life now. This was my family. I had something to protect that was more precious than my own survival. Her birth was seen as a symbol by both sides. To the Apache, she was a sign of a new beginning, a child of two worlds who represented their future. I even received a formal, if cold, letter of congratulations from Whitfield's office. He was playing the part of the benevolent overseer, but I knew better. He was waiting, biding his time. The moment came on a sweltering summer afternoon. A military courier arrived with an official dispatch. It was from Whitfield. He announced he was coming for a formal inspection of the territory. He wanted to personally congratulate the Apache on their successful transition to a peaceful life. It was a lie, and we both knew it. "He's coming for the heart," Ayana said, her voice grim as she read the letter over my shoulder. "The treaty gives you authority here, but he is still your superior officer. He will use this inspection as a pretext to search for it." "Then we have to move it," I said. Ayana shook her head. "It cannot be moved. It is not just a rock. It is part of the mountain. But its true nature is hidden. Only the elders know how to reveal it. He will not find it on his own." "But he won't be on his own," I said, the terrible realization dawning on me. "He'll have me. He's going to order me to show him their sacred sites. As the federal agent, I can't refuse a direct order from my commanding officer." The trap had been sprung. Whitfield had used my own position, the very solution I had offered, to corner me. If I refused, he could declare the treaty broken and attack. If I obeyed, I would lead him directly to the source of the Apache's life and strength. I was caught in an impossible checkmate. That night, Ayana came to me with a look of terrible resolve in her eyes. "There is another way," she said, "a story our people have passed down. The sky stone does not just give life, it can also take it." She explained a ritual, a dangerous and forbidden one. By performing a specific ceremony, the elders could temporarily awaken the heart's energy, causing a massive geological instability. The mountain would become a death trap. Rock slides, fissures, magnetic distortions that would drive men mad. "It would destroy the canyon," she whispered. "The heart would be buried forever, its power sealed. We would lose our sacred place, but Whitfield would lose his prize, and his force would be crushed inside the mountain." The choice was horrifying. To save her people, she was proposing they sacrifice their most sacred place, the very source of their identity, and it would mean luring Whitfield and his men into the canyon and leaving them there to die. It wasn't a battle. It was a mass execution. "I will have to lead them in," I said, my voice barely a whisper, "and stay with them, to make it look real." She looked at me, her eyes filled with a love so fierce it hurt. "It is the only way," she said. "You must convince him the heart is a weapon you want to help him secure. You must lead him into the trap. And I will lead our people away, to a new home." This was the end game, the final, desperate play. I would have to become Sergeant Collier one last time. I would have to gain Whitfield's absolute trust, only to betray him in the most final way imaginable. It would almost certainly mean my own death, but it would guarantee that my daughter and her people would live. The day Whitfield arrived, I was ready. I greeted him with a smile, the loyal subordinate. I told him I had made a breakthrough. I had convinced the elders to show me the location of the Sky Stone. I told him I would lead him there, that we could secure it for the United States government together. The greed in his eyes was blinding. He believed me completely. He thought he had finally won. As I led him and his column of 50 soldiers into the narrow winding canyon that led to the heart of the mountain, I didn't look back. I knew Ayana was watching from the cliffs above. I could feel her presence, a silent strength guiding me forward. We reached the center of the canyon, a vast circular chamber open to the sky. In the center was a massive smooth black rock that seemed to drink the sunlight. The heart. "This is it," I said to Whitfield. He dismounted, his face flushed with triumph. He walked toward the stone, reaching out to touch it. And that's when the ground began to shake. A low hum started, rising in pitch until it was a deafening roar. The air crackled with energy. Dust rained down from the canyon walls. The soldiers' horses screamed and bolted. Whitfield spun around, his face a mask of confusion and rage. "Collier! What is this?" "It's over, Marcus," I said, drawing my pistol. He finally understood. The betrayal in his eyes was absolute. You traitor," he screamed, drawing his own weapon. But it was too late. The mountain was coming down around us. A massive rock slide began at the canyon entrance, sealing it completely. The humming intensified, and fissures began to snake across the ground. The soldiers were in a panic, trapped in a collapsing tomb. Whitfield fired at me, his shot going wide as the ground lurched beneath him. I fired back. My aim was true. The man who had destroyed my life, who had tried to exterminate a people for his own ambition, fell to the ground. His triumph turned to dust. I looked up at the canyon rim one last time. I couldn't see her, but I knew she was there. I had bought them their future. As the rocks began to fall, I closed my eyes, my thoughts only of Ayana and our daughter. The drifter had found his home. The soldier had found his peace. I had kept my promise. But the story doesn't end there. Because as the world crumbled around me, a hand grabbed my arm and pulled me into a crevice I hadn't seen. It was Nalish. He and 2 other warriors had stayed behind. They had a hidden path, a small fissure that led up and out of the collapsing canyon. They didn't save me with words. They saved me with action. They pulled me through twisting tunnels, the roar of the dying mountain echoing behind us. We emerged into the sunlight, miles away, covered in dust but alive. I found Ayana and the rest of the tribe waiting for us in a hidden valley. The reunion was not one of celebration, but of quiet, solemn relief. They had lost their most sacred place, but they had survived. They were free. We had won. We started a new life in that valley. The official report stated that Lieutenant Colonel Whitfield and his entire patrol had been tragically lost in a sudden and violent earthquake, a known geological risk in the region. Agent Thaddeus Crane was also listed among the missing, presumed dead. The ghost of Sergeant Collier was finally laid to rest, and Thaddeus Crane, the drifter, was reborn. Not as a federal agent, but as a husband, a father, and a member of the Apache tribe. I never forgot the price that was paid for our peace. But every time I look at my daughter, who grows with her mother's wisdom and, I hope, some of my own resilience, I know it was worth it. We built a bridge between 2 worlds, not with treaties or lies, but with sacrifice and love. The desert holds its secrets well, and out there, under the vast, silent sky, our story became just one more legend whispered on the wind. A story of a man who lost his name, but found his soul. If you enjoyed this story, and you want to hear more tales of forgotten history and impossible survival, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. And don't forget to ring the notification bell so you don't miss a single chapter of The Unknown. Let me know in the comments below, what would you have done in my shoes?